If Diesel hadn't clawed at that old army green jacket, nobody would have noticed the blood. Nobody would have questioned it. And the man responsible, he would have stayed dead, at least on paper. But dogs don't look away from the truth. They don't rationalize. They don't talk themselves out of what they feel. Diesel, scarred, silver-fled, and retired from the K-9 unit 3 years prior, wasn't just clawing at an old coat on the wall. He was sounding the alarm, and Linda Weston was finally ready to listen. It started on a Tuesday. The rain hadn't stopped for 2 days straight. The kind of New Hampshire downpour that soaked through your boots and clung to your bones. Linda, 62, had made tea and curled up on her recliner with a throw blanket, watching the wind bend the maple trees outside. That's when she heard the bark, not a warning bark. Not the frantic yelp Diesel used when deer passed by the window. This was deeper, intentional. One bark, then a low growl, then claws scratching at the floorboards with force. Linda's heart dropped. "Diesel," she called out. The dog didn't come. She stood slowly, joints stiff from the damp, and shuffled down the hallway. The lights were dim, the air smelled faintly of cedar and coffee. And there he was, Diesel, front paws braced, teeth bared, clawing the base of the coat rack nailed into the drywall. It wasn't the rack that caught her attention. It was the jacket. The old, frayed, army green field coat, her late son-in-law's, hung there out of guilt, maybe, or memory. It had been there for years, untouched. She couldn't even remember who'd brought it over. Probably Eli. He never talked much about his father. "Easy, boy," she said, stepping closer. Diesel snarled low in his throat, then sat rigid, alert, eyes locked on the fabric. His tail thudded once against the wall. Linda stared at the jacket. That coat hadn't moved in years, so why now? By morning, she thought the dog had calmed down. Diesel ate normally, trotted alongside her to the mailbox, even napped under the kitchen table like always. But when she walked back into the hallway, he was there again. This time, sitting perfectly still beneath the coat rack, head tilted, watching. "I should just throw the darn thing out," Linda muttered, reaching for it. Diesel growled. It wasn't just a warning, it was a plea. She hesitated, pulled her hand back. Okay, geez. That evening, Eli came down from his bedroom, earbuds dangling from his hoodie. 16, tall, soft-spoken, and polite enough, though lately more distant. "Hey," she called to him, nodding toward the coat. "That jacket, was it your dad's?" He shrugged. "I guess. I don't really remember. It's been there a while. Diesel won't stop barking at it." Eli barely glanced up. "Probably smells like an animal or something. I don't know." Linda let it go, but something stuck in her gut. She'd lived too many years to ignore that kind of feeling. The next morning, she took the jacket down. Dust puffed into the air. The fabric felt heavy, wetter than it should have been. She turned it around. Near the inside of the collar, barely visible unless you looked for it, was a dark reddish patch, like a coffee stain. She sniffed it. Iron. She dropped the jacket immediately. Diesel barked once. Linda backed up, heart pounding, her mind racing through every explanation that made sense. Wine, paint, mud, none of them stuck. That afternoon, she placed the coat into a plastic bag and drove it across town to the only person she trusted with this kind of thing, Deputy Mara Hale. They'd known each other for decades. Mara had been a shy girl who used to pet Linda's golden retriever back in the day. Now she wore a badge, a sidearm, and a quiet sense of purpose. "You said it smells like blood," Mara asked, lifting the plastic gingerly. "I know how it sounds," Linda replied. "But Diesel, he's been acting like something's wrong with it." Mara raised an eyebrow. "You're saying your dog's investigating now?" "I'm saying he knows what I don't," Linda said firmly. Mara smiled faintly but nodded. Fair enough. I'll take a look. As Mara took the bag back to her cruiser, Diesel barked again from inside Linda's Subaru. 3 sharp barks, like a warning or a countdown. Hey, if you've ever seen a dog do something no human could explain, if you believe animals see more than we do, consider subscribing to the channel. We share real stories like Diesel's that prove sometimes the quietest Schuster uncover the loudest truths. That night, Linda couldn't sleep. Every creak in the floor sounded like footsteps. Diesel paced from room to room. At 3:17 a.m., she found him standing in front of her late husband's photo wall, barking at the coat rack, even though the jacket was gone. That's when she saw it, a small, rust-colored streak running down the wall behind where the coat had hung. She touched it with a tissue. It smeared dark red. Not rust, blood. A week later, Mara called. It tested positive, she said quietly. Human blood, type O negative. Linda's breath hitched. She looked at Eli across the room, headphones on, eyes glazed over a screen. Did you find anything else? She asked. Not yet, Mara said. But I want to ask you something. What's that? Where exactly did you say that coat came from? Linda swallowed. I didn't, but I'm starting to think I need to ask my grandson. She waited until dinner time, made Eli his favorite, boxed mac and cheese, garlic toast, a soda. Sat down across from him. Eli, honey, she said gently. I need you to be honest with me. He looked up slowly. Okay. That jacket, the green one, are you sure you don't remember where it came from? Eli stared at his plate. Then, without blinking, he said, Dad gave it to me a few months before the fire. Linda felt her throat tighten. You mean before he died? He nodded. He said to hide it, that it had stuff he didn't want people finding. She leaned in. What kind of stuff, Eli? I don't know, he said. I never looked. But Diesel did. And now that the coat was gone, the dog had a new target. He stood in the hallway again. This time, not beneath the rack. This time, he was pawing at the floorboard just beneath the hallway vent. Claw, whine, paw again. Linda watched in silence. She didn't know what was buried beneath that vent. But she knew one thing for sure. Diesel did. Linda Weston had lived in that old farmhouse for over 40 years, and she could count on one hand the number of times she'd pried open the hallway vent. That morning made it one more. Diesel didn't bark this time. He just sat there, head tilted slightly, eyes trained on the small metal grate. His body was tense, like he was waiting for something, like he already knew. Linda knelt down beside him, bones creaking, and brushed her hand along the vent's edge. It was dusty, but something else was there, too. A faint, sticky residue. She unscrewed it slowly, bracing herself for mouse droppings or old crayons. What she found instead was a small black zippered pouch. The fabric was worn. The zipper rusted at the edges. It looked military. No tag, no logo, just blank, ominous black. Her breath caught. Diesel whined low and backed up a few steps, sitting as if to say, now it's your turn. Linda took it to the kitchen, set it gently on the table, and unzipped it. Inside were 2 things. First, a tightly folded business card, yellowed and stiff from time. Second, a brass cufflink, bloodied and wrapped in a strip of gauze. She stared. The card read, Jacob Lindley, freelance contractor, phone number. No address, just a name. Her heart raced. She recognized it. Not the card itself, but the name. Jacob Lindley. That was the man who vanished from Grafton in 2013. A drifter. Odd jobs. Everyone said he skipped town after falling behind on rent and pissing off the wrong folks. But no body was ever found, and now his business card was hidden inside her house along with what looked like blood. Linda's fingers trembled as she picked up the gauze-wrapped cufflink. Diesel rested his head on her knee, like he could feel the dread rolling through her chest. "This was no accident," she whispered. She called Deputy Mara Hale again, told her everything. By 3 p.m., Mara arrived at the farmhouse with gloves, a flashlight, and a quiet look in her eye that said she didn't think Linda was crazy anymore. "You found this where?" she asked, slipping the pouch into an evidence bag. "Behind the hallway vent. Diesel showed me." Mara gave the dog a long look. "I'm starting to think he should be on the payroll." Linda forced a tight smile, but her chest was knotted. Mara continued, "We'll test for blood. See if we can match it to anything in the system. Same with the fingerprint on the card." Linda lowered her voice. "Do you think it's connected to Jacob Lindley?" Mara didn't answer right away. Instead, she asked, "How well did you really know Wesley?" Linda froze. Wesley Bowman, her late son-in-law, Eli's father, declared dead in a house fire a decade ago, a decorated veteran, grieving father, beloved community member. She opened her mouth, then closed it. The truth was, she didn't know him well at all. He kept to himself, talked more to Eli than to her, and rarely made eye contact. There were moments, long silences, a flash of something in his stare, that always unsettled her. But she'd told herself she was imagining things, that grief had colored her judgment. "I thought I did," she said quietly. That evening, Eli stayed holed up in his room. Linda could hear his gaming headset through the wall. Gunfire, explosions, teenage laughter. Diesel didn't leave her side. She reheated some meatloaf and sat in silence with the TV on mute. Outside, the rain had finally stopped. The trees were still. The world was quiet. Too quiet. Diesel stood suddenly and padded toward the back door, nose twitching. Linda followed. He wasn't barking, just watching. The back porch light flickered once. Then came the sound, barely audible, but definitely there. A car engine, idle, somewhere near the tree line, maybe 50 yards out. Linda squinted, pressed her face to the glass. Then it cut off. Silence. No headlights, no doors opening, just gone. She locked the deadbolt and turned all the lights off except the kitchen. Diesel stayed by the window all night. The next morning, she had a voicemail from Mara. "Linda, the blood on the cufflink tested positive. Human, typo negative again, and we ran prints off the business card. We got a match. Jacob Lindley, confirmed. Last seen August 2013. There's more. You're going to want to sit down." By noon, Linda was back at the station, hands gripping a styrofoam coffee cup, staring at the wall while Mara laid out the files. "The FBI had a minor case on Lindley," Mara explained. "Nothing major, just suspicion of involvement in a stolen tools ring, but here's the kicker." She flipped over a photo. It was grainy surveillance, dated August 2, 2013. It showed a gas station, a man pumping gas, and standing behind him, half-shadowed by a truck door, was Wesley Bowman, alive, face clear, beard longer, but unmistakably him. Linda's mouth went dry. "That photo was taken 2 months after the fire," Mara said softly. "That can't be," Linda whispered. "He died. I saw the fire." "There were bones in that fire," Mara replied. "But never positively matched to Wesley. No dental, no DNA, just assumptions." "Then who?" "We don't know yet." Linda felt like the world had tilted sideways. If Wesley had staged his death, then someone else had burned in that fire. And the jacket Diesel wouldn't stop clawing at, it wasn't a relic of memory. It was evidence. That night, Linda sat down with Eli. No TV, no distractions, just candlelight and the sound of the kitchen clock ticking too loud in the silence. I need to ask you something, she said. Eli nodded slowly. Do you remember the night of the fire? His face stiffened. I know it was a long time ago, she continued, but I need to know what happened. Really? Eli was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then he whispered, Dad came home late. Linda leaned in. He had blood on his shirt. I asked what happened. He told me to be quiet. Said he'd explain later. Eli swallowed hard. He went into the garage. I heard him dragging something heavy. Then I smelled gas. That's when he took me outside and told me not to look back. Linda reached for his hand. He made me sit in the truck. He threw the coat in the back seat. Said if anyone ever asked, he died in the fire. Then he disappeared. You never told anyone. I was 7, Grandma. I thought I imagined it. Linda's heart shattered. She looked at Diesel, still as stone at the back door. The pieces were coming together now, and they were pointing to a truth far uglier than she ever imagined. At midnight, Diesel barked again, this time loud and sharp. Linda jolted awake and rushed to the window. A figure was moving near the barn. Tall, broad-shouldered, hood pulled low. He didn't go to the house, didn't knock, just stood there, watching. Diesel growled low, steady, unblinking. Linda picked up the phone and called Mara. She whispered into the receiver, I think he's back. The man in the hood was gone by the time Mara pulled into the driveway. Linda stood on the porch, shotgun in hand, Diesel posted beside her like a statue. Her hands were trembling, not from the weight of the gun, but from the knowledge settling in her bones like ice. She wasn't crazy. He was real, and he had come back. Mara stepped out of her cruiser slowly, eyes scanning the tree line with practiced calm. You said he didn't approach? Linda shook her head. Just stood there. Didn't say a word. But it was him, Mara. I know it. Diesel growled softly. His eyes hadn't left the woods. Did Eli see anything? Mara asked. Linda turned. He's still sleeping. At least I hope he is. Mara sighed, hands on her belt. I'll put in a patrol request. We'll have a unit drive by every hour. But if it really is Wesley, if he's back, this is about more than a cold case now. Linda looked out at the barn, shadows pulled like ink beneath the sloped roof. He's watching the house. Mara nodded. He's not done hiding. He's looking for something. Linda didn't respond, but she knew exactly what Wesley was looking for. The jacket was gone, the pouch too, and the only thing left tying him to Jacob Lindley might be Eli. By the time the sun crept above the trees, Diesel was still standing watch. Linda brewed a pot of strong coffee and called Eli down for breakfast. He looked pale, lips tight, barely touching his food. Did you sleep at all? She asked. Eli shrugged. Not really. She poured syrup over his pancakes, trying to keep her voice calm. There was a man out by the barn last night. Eli froze. We think it might have been your dad. His fork clattered against the plate. I know this is hard, Linda said gently. But I need you to be honest. Has he ever tried to contact you? Eli didn't answer at first. Then, in a voice barely louder than a whisper, he said, he sent me a letter last year. Linda blinked. What? It didn't have a return address. Just said he was sorry. Said I'd understand everything soon. I burned it. I didn't know what to do. Linda exhaled slowly, her hands tightening around her coffee mug. Why didn't you tell me? Because if he's alive, then everything I believed is a lie. Linda reached across the table and held his hand. You're not alone in this. Diesel patted over and rested his chin on Eli's lap. Later that morning, Mara returned with backup. A younger officer named Dixon stood watch near the woods while Mara and Linda walked the perimeter of the barn with Diesel. He sniffed hard at the far side of the building near a rotting old wood pile. Suddenly, he stopped, tail stiff, nose pressed to the ground. Mara crouched and shone her flashlight into the gaps between the logs. There, nestled beneath damp wood and leaves, was a burner phone, dusty, dead, but unmistakably placed. Mara lifted it carefully with gloved hands. "Looks like he's been closer than we thought. Could he have been listening in?" Linda asked. Mara frowned. "Not with this. It's a cheap prepaid. Probably just used to make a quick call and toss it. But if he's back, that means he's watching us now, watching Eli." Diesel barked once, sharp, sudden. Mara turned. "What is it, boy?" He trotted to the barn door and sat, paw against the old latch. Linda's stomach dropped. She hadn't been inside the barn in over 2 years. They opened it slowly, the wood creaking on rusted hinges. Dust floated in the beams of light from outside. Inside, the place smelled of mildew, oil, and something else, something sour and familiar. Diesel growled low, stepping forward slowly, nose to the ground. The space was filled with old tools, broken furniture, a rusted riding mower. But in the far corner, under a blue tarp, was a large shape. Diesel pawed at it. Mara pulled the tarp back. It was a metal trunk, army-issued, dented, and scratched. She popped the latch. Inside were clothes, old boots, a knife, and, folded neatly in a Ziploc bag, a passport. Wesley Bowman. Issue date 2014. Photo taken with longer hair and a beard. "Jesus," Mara muttered. "He's been living under a new identity this whole time." Linda looked at Diesel. He knew. He always knew. Mara said, "We just didn't listen." That afternoon, Linda sat on the back porch, watching the patrol car idle near the road. Eli sat beside her, flipping through an old yearbook, silent. Diesel lay stretched across the deck, but his ears were still perked. "I keep thinking," Eli said suddenly, "about the night of the fire." Linda turned. "There was a smell," he continued. "Before the explosion, not just gas, something chemical, like burning rubber." "I don't know." Linda rubbed his back. "You were just a kid, but I wasn't crazy," he said. "He told me to look away, told me to forget everything." Diesel lifted his head, as if he understood. "I think," Eli whispered, "he knew he'd have to come back one day to finish it." Linda blinked. "Finish what?" "Whatever he buried." That evening, Mara returned again, this time with a state investigator. The blood on the cufflink had been confirmed through partial DNA. It was Jacob Lindley. The mystery wasn't a mystery anymore. It was a homicide. "What about the bones in the fire?" Linda asked. Mara sighed. "We're exhuming the remains, running full tests. If they don't match Wesley, then we have a second unknown victim. And Wesley's been walking free for 10 years. Mara nodded grimly. "Not anymore." Diesel sat near the door, eyes fixed on the woods again, as if he could already feel the man coming closer. That night, Linda dreamed of fire. The kind that burns too bright, too fast, that eats everything in seconds and leaves behind silence and ash. She woke up drenched in sweat, heart racing. And when she looked out the window, the barn was on fire. She screamed for Eli, grabbed Diesel by the collar, and rushed outside. The flames roared up the old beams, licking the sky orange and black. Mara's cruiser screeched up the drive seconds later, followed by the fire truck, but it was too late. The barn was gone, and so was the trunk. Hours later, standing in the charred rubble, Mara kicked at the scorched remains. No prints, no witnesses, no video. "He's erasing everything." Linda crouched and touched a piece of melted metal. "He was here. He saw us find it. He's watching. Mara looked at her. And now he knows we're watching back. Diesel whined softly, nose still twitching in the smoke. Let him come, Linda said coldly. We'll be ready. The morning after the fire, the entire property smelled like wet ash and burnt rubber. The barn was gone. Nothing left but a blackened skeleton of beams and molten debris. And with it, every piece of physical evidence they had against Wesley Bowman had been reduced to smoke. But not everything had been erased. Not Diesel, and not Eli's memory. Linda stood at the edge of the ruins, arms folded tight over her chest, watching smoke curl from the last embers. Her neighbors had already called to check in. Some even brought muffins and casseroles, offering sympathy and sideways glances, like she was both a victim and a potential headline. Mara had been on site all night. Tired but sharp-eyed, she now crouched near the edge of the debris with an arson investigator. They were trying to determine if the fire had been set from inside. I found this under what used to be the workbench, the investigator said, holding up a half-melted plastic bottle. Diesel growled when he smelled it. Accelerant, Mara muttered. Probably gasoline. Linda shook her head. He was watching, waiting until we found it, and then he lit the match. Eli stood quietly on the porch behind them, hands in the pocket of his hoodie. He hadn't said much all morning. Diesel kept his distance, but his eyes never left the boy. Mara turned to Linda. We're not done. Not even close. If he's back, he's bound to leave more behind. Linda nodded. Then we look where he thought we wouldn't. That afternoon, Linda returned to the house with Diesel. She left Eli asleep upstairs. His nightmares had been getting worse. He wouldn't say what they were about, but Linda could guess. She poured herself a mug of black coffee, then wandered through the hallway again, past the empty space where the jacket once hung. The wall was freshly painted, but she could still feel the outline in her mind, the collar, the blood, the moment Diesel had first started clawing. Instinctively, she looked down at the floor, right where Diesel had pawed before at the baseboard. It didn't look unusual. Same paint, same trim, but there was a faint line, just barely visible, where the wood dipped inward, a hairline crack. Diesel walked over and sat beside it, staring. Linda placed her mug on the floor and knelt down. She ran her fingers along the trim. Then, without a word, she got up, grabbed a screwdriver, and began to pry it loose. The board creaked and splintered. Behind it was an opening, narrow, black, and deep. The crawl space. Linda grabbed a flashlight and called Mara. 10 minutes later, both women were lying flat on their stomachs, peering into the darkness. It smelled like mold and old earth. Diesel barked once behind them, as if to say, "You're close." Linda led the way, crawling slowly. The ground was damp, cold. Her flashlight beam cut through cobwebs and dust. And then she saw it. An old duffel bag, covered in dirt, heavy. She pulled it toward her. Mara joined her and opened it gently, hands gloved, movements careful. Inside was a folded tarp. They unwrapped it together and froze. Bones, long, pale, weathered, a partial skull, a rusted wallet. Mara's breath caught. Oh my God. Inside the wallet was an ID card. Jacob Lindley. They sat in silence on the porch while the crime scene team arrived. Eli watched from the window. Diesel sat beside Linda, pressing gently into her leg, like he could feel the memories crawling back into her skin. You were right, Mara said quietly. Wesley didn't just stage his death. He switched places with Jacob. Linda's voice was low. That fire wasn't to hide a body. It was to hide the truth. Mara nodded. And now we know it. The forensic team confirmed it. The skull matched Jacob's dental records. He'd been murdered long before the fire. Wesley had likely buried him in the crawl space, then placed another set of bones, possibly animal, possibly partial remains, into the barn before torching it and disappearing. It was bold, calculated, and it had worked for 10 years. Until Diesel. That evening, Mara pulled Linda aside as the team packed up. "There's something else." She held up a small evidence bag. Inside was a silver pendant on a torn leather string. "I found it next to the bones." "You recognize it?" Linda's breath caught. It was Wesley's. He used to wear it every day, some military charm from deployment. Eli had even tried it on once when he was 4, giggling in the mirror. "What does it mean?" Linda asked. Mara looked serious. "It means he came back at some point. Maybe recently, maybe years ago, but he visited the body. Maybe to check, maybe to move it. Maybe too." Linda felt the air leave her lungs. "He was standing right above it all these years." Mara nodded. And Diesel knew. That night, Eli finally asked the question Linda had feared. "Is he going to come back for me?" She hesitated. Diesel was lying at the foot of the bed, eyes open. Linda sat beside her grandson, brushing the hair from his forehead. "I don't know what your dad wants. I don't know what kind of man he is anymore." Eli looked down. "He wasn't always like that. He used to laugh with me, teach me stuff, but sometimes he'd go dark, like a switch flipped." Linda wrapped her arms around him. "No matter what happens, you're not alone." Diesel let out a low, steady breath, watching. Around midnight, Linda stepped out to the porch. The wind had picked up again. Leaves rustled across the gravel driveway. The trees whispered in ways that made her skin crawl. She turned to go back inside, and that's when she saw it, a folded piece of paper tucked under the welcome mat. She picked it up with shaking hands and unfolded it. There was no address, no signature, just one sentence in messy handwriting: "Tell Eli I'll come for him when it's safe." Her legs nearly buckled. She locked the doors, pulled all the curtains, sat at the kitchen table with the note in front of her, heart thudding like a drum. Diesel sat by the door, staring out. His tail didn't move. His eyes didn't blink. He was waiting because Wesley wasn't gone. He was getting closer. Linda Weston sat alone in the kitchen, the note still lying in front of her. Diesel hadn't moved from the doorway, his eyes locked on the front yard like a silent sentinel. "Tell Eli I'll come for him when it's safe." That single sentence echoed like thunder inside her head. She kept reading it, hoping it would somehow change. It didn't. Wesley Bowman was alive. He was close. And now he'd made it personal. She folded the paper slowly, placed it in a Ziploc, and tucked it into the kitchen drawer. No need for Eli to see it yet. Not until she knew exactly what it meant. But deep down, she suspected he already knew. The next morning, Eli didn't come down for breakfast. Linda knocked gently on his door. "Eli, you okay, sweetheart?" A beat of silence. Then the door opened a crack. His eyes were bloodshot. He hadn't slept. "Can I talk to you?" he asked softly. She stepped back, letting him pass. Diesel followed close behind. They sat at the kitchen table, sunlight warming the floorboards. Eli picked at the edge of his sweatshirt. "I remember something," he said, "from the night of the fire." Linda kept still, letting him take his time. "It was late," he began. "I was supposed to be in bed, but I snuck downstairs to get cookies. I heard arguing coming from the garage." He paused. "I thought it was just Dad yelling at himself. He did that sometimes, but when I peeked through the door, there was a man there, a stranger. He was tied up, bleeding." Linda's eyes widened, but she said nothing. "Dad saw me," Eli continued, his voice shaking. "He didn't yell. He just stared, like he didn't recognize me. Diesel let out a soft whimper. Eli looked at him and nodded, almost as if thanking him for the courage. He walked over, closed the door behind me, told me not to say a word, said the man had hurt someone, said he had to take care of it. Linda reached across the table and squeezed his hand. I remember him grabbing a wrench, Eli whispered. Then he put me in the truck and told me to look out the window. Said we were going to start over. Mara arrived an hour later. Linda filled her in on everything, Eli's memory, the note, and the quiet certainty growing inside the boy. He remembers more than we thought, Mara said. And it lines up. The body we found in the crawl space, he was restrained. There were marks on the wrist bones. Jacob Lindley, Linda said flatly. That poor man never stood a chance. Mara sat down, setting her phone on the table. I've been coordinating with the state. We've opened a formal murder investigation. Wesley is now officially a fugitive, wanted for homicide. Linda nodded. So, what's next? Mara looked grim. We find him before he finds Eli. That night, the house was quiet. Too quiet. Diesel lay curled by the fireplace, but his ears kept twitching. Linda double-checked the windows, locked the doors, kept the porch light on. Eli was upstairs, door open, a baseball bat resting against the wall near his bed. Linda didn't sleep. Not really. Every creak in the house sounded like footsteps. Every gust of wind outside felt like a presence. At 2:37 a.m., Diesel sat up and growled low. Linda grabbed her phone and tiptoed to the window. There was no one outside, but something was off. She opened the front door slowly, flashlight in hand. That's when she saw it, a small pile of fresh cigarette butts at the edge of the porch, still warm. The next morning, Mara had a state trooper camped out at the end of the driveway. Linda didn't argue. She made pancakes for Eli, though neither of them had the appetite. Diesel was pacing now, anxious, unsettled, like he knew the storm was getting closer. Around noon, Eli turned off his video game and came downstairs holding a notebook. I wrote it down, he said. Everything I remember. Linda read it in silence. It wasn't just the fire. It was before. Eli remembered a man named Jacob coming to the house a few times. Said he was helping Wesley with garage work, off-the-book stuff. One night, they argued loudly. Eli heard a crash, then silence. The next morning, Jacob was gone. 3 days later, the fire happened. By mid-afternoon, Mara and 2 state agents returned. They brought search dogs and scanned the entire property, hoping to find signs Wesley had returned again. They didn't find him, but they did find a trail of disturbed earth near the edge of the woods, leading toward a broken section of barbed fence. Mara called it what it was, a path of retreat. He was here, she said, watching, possibly listening. Linda nodded, her jaw tight. He's circling, like a wolf testing the pen. Eli stood behind her, eyes cold with understanding. No, he said quietly. He's not testing it. He's planning to break in. That evening, Diesel wouldn't sit still. He kept walking in circles through the house, stopping near the hallway where the jacket once hung, then pacing back toward the crawl space door. He was remembering, retracing, and then he stopped at the linen closet. Linda blinked. What is it, boy? Diesel began scratching hard at the base of the door, growling low. Mara stepped forward and opened it. At first glance, it was just towels, cleaning supplies. But Diesel dove nose first into the pile, pawing furiously. A second later, Linda gasped. There, beneath the folded towels, was a burner phone. Brand new, hidden in a shoebox. How long has that been there? Mara asked, pulling on gloves. Linda shook her head. I didn't put it there. I never used that closet. Mara popped the phone open and clicked through the screen. There were 3 voicemails, all from an unknown number. The first 2 were static, unintelligible. The third, a man's voice, familiar, calm, bone-chilling. Eli, I'm not your enemy. I know what they've told you. But I never wanted to leave you. I did what I had to do. One day, you'll understand. Until then, stay sharp. It ended there. Eli turned pale. That's him, he whispered. That's his voice. Diesel let out a low bark, as if saying, then it's time to finish this. That night, Linda called a locksmith and changed every lock. They installed security cameras, reinforced the back door. The patrol car stayed parked by the barn, engine running, officer alert. But it wasn't enough to shake the feeling. Wesley wasn't just a shadow anymore. He was a ghost with purpose. And Eli was the unfinished chapter. Linda stood at the window long after the sun went down. Diesel sat by her side, staring out into the woods because somewhere out there, a man who should have been dead was watching them. And Diesel, scars and instinct still razor-sharp, was waiting to bring him down. The house felt like a trap. Not because of the new locks or the patrol car stationed out front, not because of the cameras or the reinforced doors. It was the air, the weight of it, like everyone inside was just waiting. Eli barely spoke that morning. He sat at the kitchen table, tracing circles into the wood with his thumb while Diesel lay at his feet, eyes alert. Linda brewed coffee but didn't touch hers. She couldn't sit still, couldn't keep her hands from trembling. Even Mara Hale, calm, calculated Mara, paced the living room with her phone pressed to her ear, coordinating with state police, watching the surveillance feed from the porch cam in real time. Everyone knew it was coming. Wesley Bowman was going to make his move, and it would be tonight. By 4 p.m., it was already getting dark. The trooper on duty, a quiet guy named Nelson, radioed in and confirmed the woods were clear for now. No tracks, no movement. Linda stood on the porch with her coat zipped up, arms crossed against the chill. She watched the tree line like it might shift and give him away. Eli stepped beside her. "Grandma?" he asked softly. She turned. "Yes, sweetheart. Will it ever feel normal again?" She didn't lie. "I don't know, but I do know this. Whatever he is now, whatever he became, he's not stronger than the truth." Diesel let out a single soft bark. He agreed. That evening, they made a plan. Eli would sleep in Linda's room with Diesel nearby. Mara would stay in the guest room with her service weapon on the nightstand. Nelson remained in the cruiser outside. They kept the house dim, quiet, no TV, no music, just stillness. And that's when it happened. At 11:42 p.m., Diesel stood. Not quickly, not with panic, but with precision. He moved to the hallway window and growled. Linda followed and looked out. A shadow slipped past the fence. No flashlight, no noise, just darkness moving like a man who knew the terrain. Mara stepped out from the guest room in her socks, gun drawn. "He's here," Linda whispered. They didn't wait. Mara radioed Nelson and took her position by the back door. Linda ushered Eli into the hallway closet, wrapping her arms around him. Diesel stood by the stairs, still silent, his entire body coiled like a spring. Then came the first sound. The garage door creaked. He was inside. Mara moved swiftly, and Diesel followed. Linda grabbed a fire poker and locked the closet behind her. She held her breath. Footsteps, slow, deliberate, from the mudroom to the kitchen. Then, Eli, a voice called out, rough, weathered, familiar. "I'm not here to hurt you. I just want to see you." Linda felt like she'd swallowed ice. Mara moved to the edge of the hallway, pressed against the wall. Diesel growled low. "I know you're scared," Wesley said, now fully inside. "But they lied to you, son. I had to leave. I did it to protect you. A pause. Then, I buried a monster that night, Eli, not a man. Diesel moved first. A blur of muscle and instinct. He launched around the corner with a snarl. The thud of his paws, the sound of a man yelling, the crash of something breaking. Mara was behind him in a second. Hands up. Hands where I can see them. More crashing. Then silence. Linda burst from the hallway, fire poker in hand. Diesel stood over Wesley, teeth bared, paw pinning his chest. Wesley was older now, face sunken, beard scraggly, eyes wild. His jacket was torn, a knife strapped to his thigh. "Don't shoot," he gasped. "I didn't hurt anyone." Mara didn't lower the weapon. "You broke into a house full of witnesses carrying a weapon after faking your own death and committing murder. I'd say hurting someone was next on your list." Wesley looked past her toward the stairs. "Eli," he whispered. Linda stepped in front of him. "You lost the right to call his name the moment you dug that grave and left your own child behind." Diesel snarled. Wesley finally looked away. It took less than 10 minutes for backup to arrive. Wesley was handcuffed, read his rights, and placed in the back of the cruiser. Eli watched from the porch, Diesel at his side. He didn't cry, didn't speak, just watched. Mara sat beside him, hand on his shoulder. "I want to talk to him," Eli said. Mara hesitated. "You don't have to." "I know." She nodded. "I'll stay close." They opened the cruiser door. Wesley looked up, surprised. Eli stepped forward, just enough to be seen. "You wanted to see me?" he said. Wesley swallowed. "I didn't mean to scare you. I just wanted you to know the truth." Eli nodded once. "I know it now." Wesley blinked. "You believe me?" "No," Eli said. "But I believe her." He pointed to Linda. "And I believe him." He turned to Diesel, who stood like a soldier beside him. Wesley's face twisted into something unreadable: regret, rage, resignation. It didn't matter. Eli stepped back, and the cruiser door shut. It was over. The next morning, the house was quiet in a new way. Not the stillness of fear, but the quiet that comes after a storm. Diesel sat on the porch in the morning sun, nose to the breeze. Eli sat beside him, tossing bits of toast to the squirrels. Linda stood at the door, watching her family begin again. Mara stopped by one last time before the paperwork took her away for the rest of the week. "He confessed," she said, sipping coffee. "Said it started as a fight, then turned into panic. He buried Jacob, staged the fire, and vanished. He'd been living off the grid ever since, changed names, moved around." Linda nodded. "Why'd he come back?" Mara shrugged. "He said he wanted his son. But I think he missed control." Linda looked at Diesel. "He didn't count on the dog." Mara smiled. "No criminal ever does." That afternoon, Eli stood beside Diesel in the hallway. He hung a new photo where the coat once was. A picture of Diesel in uniform. Below it, a brass tag: "He never stopped protecting." Thank you so much for following Diesel's journey. If you've ever felt the quiet strength of a dog who sees more than we do, who senses truth when others ignore it, then you understand what makes heroes like Diesel unforgettable. Subscribe to the channel for more true and powerful stories like this one. And let us know in the comments.